Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff. My name is Jason and today we are off to a model show. So this is the Bolton Model Show. It's always my first model show of the year and it's held at the Bolton Wanderers football ground. This is possibly the second largest model show in the UK after Telford, and I always enjoy the atmosphere here. So this was the first time the show had been on for a little while because of the pandemic, and so it had been titled Bolton Strikes Back, and subsequently we had a little bit of a Star Wars theme running through the day. They were also focused on the 70th anniversary of Revell as a theme, although I've got to say I didn't see a lot of people buying into that. Because it was the first one for a while, some extra security being brought in to keep the peace, and that seemed to work quite well. So I'm going to share with you most of the models that were at the show and then pick out one or two of my favourites. Like this one. I don't know whether it's because I've got a looming Gotha build, but I've got a bit of a thing for First World War aircraft right now, and I love the simplicity of this little diorama, couple of figures in a field, set the aircraft off really nicely, and I thought it was a very nicely finished model. I really enjoyed this one. It was good to see some submarines that didn't just look like boring grey tubes, and I really liked the animation of the sea on this particular diorama. Fairly sure this is the new tool Airfix 172 Vulcan. This is one of two white Vulcans I saw during the day, and it was interesting to see the completely different approaches used. When you go to a number of shows, you start seeing the same models over and over again. They become recognisable. So it's good to see quite a lot of models that I don't think I'd seen before, or certainly hadn't really noticed in the crowd of models. Some very nice things on display during the course of the day, actually. I always like to see something a bit different, like this digger, which really stood out from the crowd. It's a different colour, and I love the little diorama that it'd been put into. And it really shone out amongst all the military vehicles. This Jaguar E-Type caught my eye. The finish on it was really nice, but I loved the way the engine just popped out at you. I spent a little bit of time just stood there studying this one. Really nice build. Sometimes when you see tank transporters, they sort of disappear. The model, the trailer, the tractor are all the same colour, but that was not the case with this one. See how the tractor, the trailer and the stowed vehicle are all very different, but to the eye it doesn't look unsympathetic or out of place. I thought it worked really well, and I really liked that idea. I'm a huge Space 1999 fan, my favourite programme of all time, so I love these, absolutely loved them. For me, modern jets are all about the paint schemes, otherwise there's not much to them, but I really enjoyed this one. The decal scheme on it was really complex and it really brought the model to life. I really enjoyed this capture of the scene from the film Herbie. I thought it was really well done with the car on two wheels and the driver hanging out of the door. It was a really nice way of displaying the model. Quite an imaginative piece of work, and it looked spot on. This was a really nice model and I spent quite a bit of time looking at it. I also thought it was a really nice way of using some of the box artwork to display your model at the end. Perhaps needs mounting on a stand, but I thought it was a good idea. Food for thought. I tend to think of a diorama as a 3D photograph, so I wasn't sure if the flickering flames added or detracted. Have another look. What's your eye drawn to? Love the diorama, but I think the flickering detracts. Always nice when you spot something that's in your stash, like this Hunter here. Very nicely done model as well. I think it's all the colours on the shields, but I'm always drawn to a Viking longship. And I made one in plastic when I was a kid. Maybe it's time I revisited, because I really enjoyed this one. If you want to stand out at a model show, then paint your model bright red or bright yellow. This certainly grabbed you as soon as you spotted it. A couple of really nicely displayed US aircraft now. Both of them were a real joy to just stand and study for a little while. Love the little weathering of the panels on this one as well. Very, very nicely done. Top tip, watch your feet when there's androids about. The Airfix Bolton Pole Defiant here was quite a nice little build. I've done it in 172, but it looks quite different to anything else in 148, so probably worth me getting one of them. A nice way of displaying your interior build Tiger. This had been broken down so you could see everything, but it also made sense. So yeah, I thought this looked quite good. I enjoyed the weathering on this tank. It was subtle yet effective and realistic. I think it really showed the model off to best effect. Thought it was really good. I was really enjoying this Scooby-Doo car, and then Paula said it should be a van, shouldn't it? So we moved on. The selection of early cars were quite eye-catching, and I've done one recently, so I know how much work goes into these tiny little things, but they look really nice. The Hungarian Air Force Bf 109 was very eye-catching. The finish was nicely done. I really liked it, and a great use of a picture frame as well for a display stand. Thought it looked great. There was quite a lot of World War I aircraft about, so it really got me in the mood for my Gotha build. Another stunning example. This table had focused on the Revell 70th anniversary, and as such there was some very nice and some quite old kits there. There was also some real collector's items. Spot in the top right corner that pack of Revell paints. That must be from the 50s or 60s maybe. So yeah, it was really a nice table to stand and study for a bit. The World War I theme wasn't limited to aircraft. There was quite a few armoured vehicles and things dotted around. Really loved this double-decker bus, which I think is a mini art kit. Not as much fantasy stuff around as usual, I thought, this year, but where there was some, it was to a very high standard. Sometimes I think a clean model, no weathering, really shows the subject off to its very best, and this was one of those examples. I really enjoyed this. But then on other times I absolutely love a good session of weathering, and this van had definitely had a good session of weathering, and it looked equally as good. I have one of these part built and awaiting paint, so it was nice to see what it's going to look like when it's fully finished. So yeah, I enjoyed this. Very nice. I really enjoyed the subtle weathering on this tank. It brought it out to its best effect and looked very natural and normal, but really a lot of work had gone into it. There was some really nice small scale dioramas. I really enjoyed this one of the garage and the vehicle being unloaded outside of it, and spot the little red motorbike there. It was really nicely done. The same with this breaker's yard or something similar, and I'm fairly sure that's a Matchbox diorama base. I really enjoyed this Tamiya Land Rover encountering a dinosaur. What a great little diorama that was. Very enjoyable to view. Continuing the theme of giant animals was this massive grasshopper. Someone spent a lot of time having fun building this, I think. Now this was interesting to me. It's the Tamiya 88 flat kit. And I built it as a kit, and I pretty much did it like you see here. I just painted it all over blue, and I didn't weather it so much and so on. And I've been looking at it recently and thinking I might like to revisit it. I've not done an artillery piece for a while. And sure enough, by the end of the day, I had bought myself one from one of the sellers at the show, and I got it at a great price, about a third cheaper than I could get it on eBay. So yeah, I was happy. I enjoyed this captured British tank because the camouflage worked so well with the groundwork. As intended, it sort of merged into one, just as it's supposed to do. So I thought this was really nice. One of the advantages to a small scale diorama is that you can use space, and the space in this gave a real sense of tranquility, and again I really enjoyed it. I think this really showed off the importance of spending time on your groundwork. I almost spent as much time studying the groundwork as I did studying the models. The whole thing worked together really, really well. A very nice diorama indeed.
He called it the mule.
I like it when a model can tell a story, and the simple addition of this Polish flag told a story. So even though this wasn't on a diorama, I immediately knew that this was a captured vehicle by the Polish resistance, and that we were probably in the Warsaw Uprising, and immediately it brought you into the model and pulled you into the story. I thought it was really effective and a very nice model. Often when you see models displayed, they're sort of being displayed in anger, so I really enjoyed the fact that this vehicle was sat there with people milling around, having one of the quiet times that actually they have more often than they're in combat. So I thought it was a nice little story also. I remember building this old 70s Tamiya kit when I was a teenager, and it was actually quite nice to look at it again and just remind yourself how much you can get out of an old kit with a good bit of painting technique. Very nicely done. I have a bit of a thing going on for interwar years tanks, so I was quite drawn to this one. I thought the camouflage and the weathering was really nicely done, and it showed the model off really well. Very nice. I think the Type 1 splitty Hoovan is a Revell kit, but it certainly looks really nice when done up. Love the helicopter as well, a really fine example, and especially love this diorama. I've always fancied doing a downed aircraft diorama, and I thought this was really well done, and on close inspection this was actually all done with silver foil, so whether it's bare metal or whether it's kitchen foil, I'm not sure, but it certainly wasn't paint. It looked really good. There was a couple of tables that were solely focused on cars, and I really enjoyed looking at the cars. Always a very colourful explosion in amongst all the military vehicles, and right at this moment in time I just happened to be stood next to another YouTube channel who is also filming, so look out for Miss Modeler, who will also be putting out a Bolton Show video, no doubt. I always enjoy looking at the cars, although I'm not a big car modeler myself. This one particularly stood out to me, just grabbed me for some reason, but there were so many lovely cars there. I do wonder why I don't build more cars, to be honest.
Seeing all the green and gold protests and that anymore, are we? No. they've all gone a bit quiet. There's no more of these glazes out signs and things like that. It's all gone a bit quiet, hasn't it? Salford City. Right, I'm going to make a move. No, great. All right, mate. See you.
There's always a huge number of model tanks and trucks and military vehicles, as you'd expect. Never quite as many as there is aircraft, of course. So it's nice when some of them stand out like these two Leopard tanks did. I thought they were nicely displayed and showed them off really well. Once again, I found myself being drawn to the First World War aircraft. I thought this looked really nice. No obvious weathering, but it didn't really need it. Right next to it was a First World War French tank. Looked really nice on its display stand there. And then I have no idea what this is, but it looked really cool. And I think I'd really like to have a go at driving that in real life, although I suspect it would perhaps be a little bit noisy. I think this is the Zukimura kit, I might be wrong, but it looked really good with all its ordnance on display. And then we had this mini art kit, the truck and trailer. I'm not sure where the horses come from, but I thought it was a really nice diorama and something a little bit different to the norm. Very good. These two different scale comets looked really nice together, and actually there was quite a nice little display of German aircraft at this point, so I spent a little bit time perusing these. Even though many of the aircraft were the same, different paint schemes and what have you just made the whole display come together. Thought it was really nice. Then we had another First World War aircraft. Another downed aircraft caught my eye, this time with a little figure just giving you a sense of size and scale. Thought this was quite a nice little diorama. Really enjoyed watching this for a little bit. Well, I told you there would be a second Vulcan, and here it is. It's exactly the same kit as we saw at the start of the video, but this time you can see there's a lot more emphasis on the panel lines, and it certainly gives you a different feel. I enjoyed both the models. I never think there's enough helicopters, but this was certainly a fine example of one, which I really enjoyed. And I also really enjoyed the way that these Land Rovers had been displayed, all three together. The Landy, as it said, 74 years of service, all on one stand, looked great. This was one of my contenders for Star of the Show. There's nothing better than a diorama or a display that really shows what the equipment was aimed at being used for, and this really showed off the whole thing to nice effect. You could see the field in the middle of being ploughed, and it looked really, really effective. I really like this. We may not get enough helicopters at shows, but we certainly don't get enough ships. Really like this little display, 1/700 scale, I suspect, with a little tugboat there and a little dockside scene. Set it off really nicely. I loved this little Harrier model. The rocket had a little flickering LED just at the base of the rocket there, and it looked really, really nice. I've done a first impressions on this mini art kit here, so it was nice to get up close and personal with it. I thought they'd done a really nice job of this, and it gave me some inspiration for my build. I've said it before, but if you want to draw attention at a model show, make sure you've painted it red or yellow. This fire engine really stood out, and it was a really nice piece of work as well. This caught my attention because I have this kit on pre-order. So the tram, the figures, the base, they're all separate mini art kits, which mini art have just pulled together to release, and you can buy it all as one and save yourself some money. So I've done that. So I'm looking forward to getting the tram with its passengers and what have you. This really caught my attention. I thought it was a nice display. You focus on the people, the tram being very much a bit of the backdrop, but it set the scene, and I thought it was a beautiful little display piece.
Have a nice day. There was no negotiation. appreciation at all. Set the sunglasses on, it was really good.
Love this little tank rotting away in the jungle. I thought it was a very nicely thought out diorama, and you could just about see enough of the model to get an idea of what was going on. The unusual paint scheme on this aircraft caught my eye. The sort of powder blue and powder green, it looked really effective, and yeah, it was a nice little model right at the back end of the show for me. Well, this was another star of the show contender for me. The guy fishing next to another rotting tank. This time with a lot of effort put into what's going on under the water, and I really loved how they'd managed to get the tank that's under the water different colours to what's above the water. I thought it was really well done, and showed the model off really nicely. So this was very, very close to being my star of the show, but it wasn't. This was my star of the show, and it's all down to the composition, and just look at it. It's stunning. What I liked about this was the model had a lot of detail in terms of weathering, but without it being too heavy and detracting from the finish of the model. So you've got quite a simple little car there, in a garage with spare wheels and tools, and a little rack at the back which got some boxes on with parts in and more tools, and clearly being looked after by a car fanatic. And I thought it looked really, really nice. But it's little details like the coffee mug there. You know, this is someone's Sunday project. Every Sunday in the garage, doing a little bit of tinkering on their car project. All of this was coming out of the model, and I absolutely loved it. I could spend hours looking at this. Phenomenal job, I thought. Well, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed your visit to the Bolton Model Show, whether you made it or not. These were my highlights. It was a really good show. I enjoyed it. I made one or two little purchases as well, which is always good. So that was it. Thank you for joining. You take care, enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon. Bye for now.